Welcome to Morning Joe with Tom, with your host, Thomas Chappell. Get ready to listen to real-life stories from inspiring leaders who have overcome incredible challenges to rise to the occasion. If you're ready to add some pep to your morning with a new outlook on leadership, then grab your cup of coffee. It's time to be inspired. Here's your host, Thomas Chappell.
Hey, Chris. It is so good seeing you again. Man, it has been a very long time since we spoke. So, uh, listeners, today I met Mr. Koomey, and I'm calling Chris today only because I feel like I finally have gotten to a point where I can call him Chris. Uh, I honor this man because he had a huge influence in my life early on, and not just from the trading aspect, but from the leadership aspect. And today, he's going to tell us what he wants to talk about a little bit more. But I really want you to kind of pay attention that it's not just in the mannerisms of his leadership style, but it's what he focuses on that kind of really drives his business and the businesses that he's helped. So with that, Chris, would you please give us an introduction?
I'm so excited to be here because it's been a whole pandemic since we last saw each other. And, the world was turned upside down, and then we had to go make our way after that. And so that's part of business every day. You
Mm,
never know what the next day is going to bring. And so you have to have a clear idea of where you're going and how you're going to get there. And my focus over the last 30 years, I'm an attorney by trade, is helping business owners grow more valuable businesses. And
mhm.
you've been involved with different companies, and what happens is a lot of times people are focused on everything but growing their business.
Yeah.
And a lot of management, a lot of just understanding where you're going as a business owner and as a manager is really getting what is the ball I have to have my eye on and making sure I understand what helps that ball to roll and get bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you hit on a key crucial point. So many owners take their eye off of the ball of growth and they put it into other factors. And I just got a call from a former client that took his eye off the ball. This Doge hit him and literally wiped him out, not just from the perspective of the types of contracts he had, but the amount of spend that was going on. He was making 5 million a year, but spending over 5 million a year.
Yeah, and that's the first rule, right? Is spend less than you make.
Hmm.
That's one of the key parts of understanding where value comes from is there's six ways your company can become more valuable, and four of them relate to cash flow, positive cash flow. And so that is so critical for every business. And one of the worst questions that people ask when they're starting a business is, when do I get to break even? You're not in it to break even. You're in it to make money.
That's
And
right.
it really is. People say, well, when do you break even? Or when am I going to break even? And if that's your approach, you're always going to be at break even. You've
Oh
got to
yeah.
be saying, how do I get to the profit level that I want to get to?
Yep.
That's really got to be part of the orientation as you go, as you're running an organization, is how do I go where I really want to, as
I
opposed
think that's so important there, Chris. I would ask that you say that whole cash flow part again, because I think many listeners, especially in the space in which you and I both operated in, do not understand that. They're busy going to the country club and buying that 85 to $100,000 car immediately after they hit some level of success.
Yeah, my college roommate, one of my college roommates, grew up with the Greek ship owners, so he grew up with billionaires, and his
Oh,
and his view was, well, rich people buy fancy cars, fancy houses, fancy clothes, and I said, well, just because if you're spending your money that way and you don't have it, you're not heading the right direction. You've got to really, the idea is to keep what you're making.
right.
And that's a big, it's a choice that people make, and if you're going to spend a lot, you have to make even more.
Hmm.
And I call it it's the sine curve, right? There's times where it's okay to be risk on. Where in a business, you can take on debt, you know, doing it to fuel growth to get somewhere else. But then you also have to have a plan to take risk off. And
Right.
you have to have a plan to reduce your debt. Because if you're risk on all the time, we know that life goes up and down. We have pandemics, we have doges, we have unexpected things. If you're risk on all the time, one of those unforeseen but very foreseeable things are going to knock you down. And this is why you hear about a lot of people in real estate who are boom or bust,
Right.
because real estate is all about leverage and then leverage upon leverage and leverage upon leverage upon leverage. And you can do that for a time, but what you really have to do is, if you want to do this sustainably, if you want to do this for the rest of your life effectively, is know when is it okay, when are you emotionally ready and cash flow ready to be adding risk, but then also have a real plan to be reducing your risk so that you can take some of the heat off.
Right. If I remember right, this was one of my favorite portions of the classes that we took, and I don't want to go too far down this path, but you know, when you were talking about investing and trading and things like this, I remember you would come into the class, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm going to try to remember all the buckets, but you talked about the bucket story, and if there was buckets that money should be placed in, and I can't remember all of the details, but I remember that the savings pieces and stuff like that. But do you
Well, and
remember?
so I live it. I live it every day, Tom. And so I do touch on this in the Business Godfather treatment. But this is what I would talk about every day is that everybody first, you have to start with what does your success look like? And that's really kind of your freedom plan. Like what does freedom look like to you? What does success look like? And I'd say a lot of people don't take the time to even figure that out. They're trying to copy off someone else's paper. But as opposed to really thinking about what do they want to do, where do they want to spend their time, et cetera. But so it's worth taking some time to think about what does your success look like. And then the base of that, that's really kind of your peace of mind money. That's your preservation strategy. Those are things that are going to be kind of single digit returns. Your home buying real estate to live in. Your savings accounts, your 401ks if you're doing a kind of a index investing strategy, then that's there to help you build up money so you have peace of mind so you can sleep at night. And the problem is for most people that's where they stop. And they're only doing these single digit return pieces and the whole financial services industry is about getting you satisfied with mediocre and below average returns. So they want you to keep everything in preservation and be afraid to move. As a business owner, we're already kind of breaking out of that. And so
Mhm.
between our success plan and our preservation strategy, we need to have some current income strategies. And then we also have to have some long-term income strategies. And so basically, we have those four working together. And then, if you really want to get ambitious, you can add a third box in the middle, and that's your wealth creation strategies. And so you can have it's all built on that foundation of preservation, but you need to make sure you have current income taken care of, right? That's to pay your bills, buy your groceries. But you also need to be developing future income strategies. And if you want, and not everyone is after this, but if you want wealth creation, you need to have wealth creation strategies. And my view is, you know, if you only have a plan A, that may not work. And so very often a plan B doesn't work either. So you really need to have three strategies working in each of those areas. So you should have three preservation strategies going. You should have three current income strategies going. You should have three future income strategies building. And if you're doing wealth creation, you should have three wealth creation strategies as well. And part of it seems like a lot, but it's actually less complicated than people that are just doing it randomly.
Yeah.
Because what happens is like the normal way is if people start getting beyond that preservation, then they just start chasing whatever the next hot idea is. A few years ago it was Bitcoin, now it's gold, then it's going to be quantum computing, then it's going to, yeah, whatever kind of the flavor
Yeah.
of the day is. And because it's not a fully formulated strategy, people end up basically with a bunch of stuff, but with nothing intentionally working towards a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's that. And the thing is, that's for individuals, but it's also for your business. So if you take a look at a big company, so McDonald's, perfect example, they have sold billions and billions of burgers, but if there was a mad cow scare, what did they do? They had breakfast all day, and then they have chicken and fish fillet and salads. So that's their plan B and their plan C off of the burgers. And and every business, as you look at them, they go into these strategies where they have generally they'll have three kind of business units, and then they may have some three that they're working on for the future. And they're basically following the same plan is they know they may make all their money in plan A, but they know they need to have a B and C if plan A starts to go bad. So
Hmm.
it's with every so it's very much focused on individuals, but also every business follows this. So basically, we're learning from how large organizations function.
Wow. That's really I know the way you say it, that it's the way that businesses should operate. It's been my mission that few owners operate that way. So it's kind of this is something that is so needed out here. And uh definitely this message needs to get out.
And this is it. So that Business Godfather treatment book that I wrote when I turned 50
Hmm.
is it's about to turn 10. So we'll dust it off for next year. But a big part of that is how do I convert from being an owner operator to being an active investor in my business? And if you're an owner operator, you're caught up in the day to day. You're caught up in the tyranny of the mundane, of all these things dragging at you that basically just keeps you where you're just treading water. And you may be treading water in a nice suit, in a nice house, and the nice vacations, but you're
Yep.
still kind of essential to the business. Like one of the end of chapter questions is, if you left your business for 2 weeks, would it be running smoothly? Would you be come back to some problems, or would you be getting the moving trucks ready to move out? And I think
Mm.
for too many companies, if the owner is disconnected for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, the business just wouldn't keep operating. And
Yep.
that's kind of that shift from being an owner operator to an active investor. And I think the biggest struggle is actually trusting others. And
I would agree. I would
yeah,
agree. I would also say it's not totally trusting others. I would have an addendum onto that and say that owners tend to not hire the smartest people. They
well,
they, they have a they have a complex of some sort to want to hire people exactly like them or just under them.
well, this is
They
this is
feel like
part of the
they're
conversion from the owner operator to the active investor, is that as the active investor, that's where you want someone that's going to be able to execute your vision
exactly.
and implement the mission of your business and the values. And so, like when I was younger, I was a hard worker. I didn't think mission, vision, values made, I was like, who needs that?
Yeah.
But then as you get older and meet more people, you realize that people need a focus and that's basically the little angel on their shoulder when the owner isn't there. So they know how to deal with what's in front of them. And what you need to do as you hire people is find people that are interested in implementing your mission, vision, and values. That's the piece. And at the same time, when you're hiring someone, you got to remember, as a business owner, you're willing to take risk. When you're hiring someone, they are absolutely not there to take risk, and they're not there for the same reason as you. And so this is where it's incumbent on the owner to structure the responsibility in a way that person is capable of handling. And so I was always a big fan of kind of having people prove to you what they were going to do, as opposed to saying, having a vague idea, is have them learn the systems, have them develop the process, have them have ownership in how things are communicated. And then they're more likely to follow through. If someone just said, here, hands them a big handbook that there's no connection for them, and the likelihood of them implementing that is low. And
Yeah.
and a lot of it has to do with the type of business you're in too. And so, as a lawyer, we're always around kind of high achievers. And so you kind of assume that anyone in that space is kind of, they want to be an A player, they're striving to be an A player. But in a lot of businesses, you're not going to attract A players. You're going to get the B players and the C players and the D players.
Hmm.
And that's part of, as a manager, you have to recognize who is going to be attracted based on the salary I'm paying or the incentives that are provided or the lifestyle. And one thing I did hear, I think it was General McChrystal was talking, and he said, I hear about these people say only hire A players. And he said, the military is great at getting above average results from average players.
Hmm.
And because, and you're in the military, and the idea is, people can be trained up to get to a certain level. And but the military has thought about what are the steps? What is my standard operating procedure for everything?
Right.
And what resources are needed to do that role effectively? And I think that's where a lot of business owners fail, is that they hand responsibility to someone, but they haven't provided them with a standard operating procedure. They haven't thought about what the resources are. And even more so, I mean, we're old, crusty guys, Tom.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with 20-year-olds, when we were in school, we were just given an assignment and we just kind of had no idea what we were doing, and we just handed in what we thought was a good idea. They have been handed since they were 5 years old. They call it a rubric, but it's basically a step by step is this is what we expect for you to get an A if you do these 10 things. And if you do 8 of those things, you'll get a B. And if you do 6 of those things, you'll get a C. And their whole education has been taught like that. And it's
Yeah.
funny, government actually does that on a lot of their acquisitions. They say, here's the rubric.
Yep. No, you're right.
And are you an A, B, or C? And so this is where, based on your business, you got to look at who am I attracting? And C and D players can be very productive because,
Right.
and this is at the core, is everyone wants to be on a winning team. And what a winning team is, they've defined what winning is. They've defined what plays are we going to do to get there, and then they practice those plays so that they can execute them effectively,
Yep.
right? And that's where C and D players can be incredibly effective if they're given the right support and the right structure and the right resources to do it. And I think a lot of the problems for business owners is they assume everyone's kind of a type A, and they're like, well, why aren't you doing what I'm doing? Because I'm not you.
Uh, well,
And
and I was just gonna say, comment on that, that owners don't have a rubric for teaming. And
yeah.
that's so sad because I've seen it happen over and over. You get this mismatch, you know, and you spend a lot of time, and this is what I tell them, you spend a lot of time and money putting a proposal together to get to the end, and you've teamed with the wrong individual. Maybe they're competent in whatever that they know, but they weren't the right player for the team dynamic, or they weren't the right player for something else.
And here's something. Sometimes it is the right person, but because the owner's personality is too big,
Hmm.
they don't feel like they can put themselves out there. So they'll just take a step back and let the owner fill in the vacuum. That's something I had to learn at the online trading academy. So
Yeah.
when I first started there, if we'd go on vacation and I'd come back early if we had an event or something like that. And the team kind of took pride in, look, we don't need you.
Yeah.
And there was a couple times where I came back from vacation. I was like, what am I doing here? I should be off in Costa Rica or whatever. And so they had to train me to just trust them that they knew what they were doing and they had it. And so that's part of
But you
all
put
this
the,
evolving.
but you honestly built a system. I
Yeah,
remember that. You built a system for everything to kind of flow. That's different than what I experience out here with some of these organizations. They're still running everything like they're in charge of everything and
yeah.
master of nothing.
What that is just going to be a limiter on the size of the business. It's going to be a limiter on being able to attract talented people.
Hmm.
Because talented people that are ambitious, they want to see that that their ambition can be applied effectively in your
Yeah.
organization. And
Yeah,
so,
I actually saw that happen and that happened to me because, you know, I'm not outwardly aggressive, but I'm very motivated to kind of like win,
yeah,
very motivated to win. And uh I hitched my horse to a post that just wasn't that interested in. Literally, they're still alive, but only because they got 10-year contracts.
yeah,
But the owner just rather be down in North Carolina. His company's up here in Haymarket. He's in North Carolina, and he said, my kids have graduated college. Hmm, I've got, you know, COO, BD person, security person. Yeah, they'll call me if they need anything. And it hasn't grown.
yeah.
It hasn't grown. And like, I've been gone from there since 2015.
And that's the active investor part. So we don't want the owners to be the owner operator where they have their fingers in everything, but you have to shift over. And it's not just being, so if I've moved to North Carolina, I'm really not paying attention, then I'm just an investor. I mean, there's still a part, if you're running businesses, you need to be active and kind of there setting the vision of where are we going, what are we pursuing, so that people see the big opportunity. And
Hmm.
that's really, I think, where, where you can, as you step aside, you're not responsible for the day to day, but you can say, here's the big ones that we want to go after, and then get involved.
Yeah.
And maybe start the conversation, then hand it off to your BD person
Yeah.
and get out to a big event, make the connections, and then close the loop with the people on the back end. That's where an owner can be most effective.
Yeah.
It's to be able to, because they're the ones people know, they have the 25 years or whatever experience. They're the ones that people trust and know. So they're going to rekindle relationships, but then trust that you can hand it off to someone else and they'll be able to run with it. And that's the idea of the process. And that's, I think it's a decision that people have to make. And I'll tell you, one of the things for me, it was interesting because around that time when I wrote that book, I had some time and I was like, I'm going to help some companies grow. And so I had a number of companies that I was working with. And what I found was all but one of them were just so comfortable in their current business that they didn't really want to change.
Yeah.
They were, like if you ask them, oh, I'd like to grow, but they weren't, I'm growing.
Yeah.
And and it was like they were, because they had an above average income, they had an above average lifestyle, they were very content with where they were at. And that's fine, but it's not really growing the value of your business and really maximizing the opportunity to have impact.
Right.
And at the same time, there's the other side, Tom, is that you don't, you know, once you're making money, you don't necessarily need, like, you don't need billions of dollars for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't need tens of millions of dollars. No one needs tens of millions of dollars other than to brag and say that I'm better than someone else. For most people living, if they had $5 million, they'd be pretty good. They'd be
Yep.
well
$10
above.
million dollars will take somebody more than their lifetime, even if they had a young wife.
Exactly. Exactly. So So it's part of it is just one of the things that I would do is I'd ask people how much money did they want to make in a year, and I'd have different levels, 30,000, 60,000, 100,000, 250, a million. And the people that wanted a million, they were always the ones with the least amount of assets. And I was like, well, if you had $1 million, what would you spend it on? You don't even know. Get to the 100,000, be happy there, or the
Yeah,
250 or whatever it was. And I think what happens is people, again, they're trying to live someone else's life as
yeah,
opposed to really thinking about what do they need, what's really going to make them happy, and what does their success look like?
yeah. Well, previous to the Doge, I got up to 340K. My piece,
Yeah.
not contract wise, my piece. Um, but I can tell you, I knew exactly because I had structured and planned, and because just like you talked about developing an investment plan, things, all this stuff, and the trading plans and all that stuff that you used to teach us, I created that for my business before I had a business.
Yeah.
So I knew what I was going to do with it as soon as I had it. So I didn't have to think hard about it. I just looked at the book and said, is this still applicable? Yes, it's still
Yeah.
applicable. And marched out like that. And I did very well. I mean, I've spent most of this year just growing new line of business, not making a lot of money, but growing a new line of business and living.
And that's you need to have your plan B and your plan C going. That's what that's about.
Yep.
I'm going to get back to where I opened this, like the sources of value in a business. There's six main sources. Four of them are based on cash flow. It's cash flow from the efforts of the owner, cash flow from the effort of others, cash flow from selling commodities, and then cash flow off of intellectual property or assets, real estate or something like that. But all those cash flow means that you got to be bringing in more than you're spending.
Right.
And then the others are one is having appreciating assets. So if you're developing intellectual property or you bought real estate 20 years ago, or, you know, that's another source of value. And then the sixth one, and this is the one I think that gets overlooked a lot, is just attractiveness to a strategic buyer and knowing what people want in your industry.
Right.
And if you ever go, like, there's people that sell their business, and basically a basic business will get valued at about 2 to 4 times cash flow. Generally,
Mhm.
3 times cash flow is what they'll ask, and they'll get 2 times cash flow. So if you go to Biz Buy Sell, they have
Yep.
all these basic businesses, restaurants, roofers, whatever. And generally, that's what you see. And that can be okay. 3 times cash flow, it buys you a couple, 2, 3 years of income. But then that's just where it gets to picking the business you're in. So if you're in technology, you can get, depending on your size, and when you're smaller, you get like 3 to 6 times your cash flow. As you get a little bigger, it's 6 to 12 times. And then you can go well beyond that if you're in an attractive area. Like AI companies now are selling at 20 times revenue, never mind cash flow.
Right.
So there's this is where, as you're building your plan A, B, and C, is to say maybe I should have one of these plans should be one of these attractive to a strategic buyer plays.
Right.
That way you can have $1 million in revenue in each one, and each of them doing a different part of your overall success plan, but one could really provide you with a lot of upside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said something uh, extremely important there that didn't come out in the words, but you alluded to it, is you have to be looking at what that future is going to look like. Not just what you're going to spend it up against, but if you were, I don't know how to say this, but if you were just a system engineer company or network engineering company, a lot of technology is taking over that space. It's becoming very automated, very, where it takes fewer and fewer. And I had a systems engineer that worked for me before, and I told him, I said, someday your job's going to get replaced. I said, I have five of you now. I will only need one of you then.
Yeah.
And I said, what are you doing to plan ahead? And he's like, well, what should I do? I said, what's the newest technology coming forward? And then think beyond that one.
Yeah.
I said, AI is coming, but I said, quantum's not quite here yet. What are you doing to prepare for that?
Yeah.
And
And it's seeing the
and
next
I
wave.
think that when you want to sell, you need to kind of think about where's your company sitting in that mix.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is looking ahead because it takes the same amount of effort. Everyone has the same 168 hours in a week. And, some people have used that 168 hours to become a thousandaire. Some have used that 168 hours to become a millionaire. And some have used that 168 hours to be a billionaire. They didn't have any more time. And so, but they're using their time differently. And I would say now, particularly for younger people, the biggest challenge to them is that they've been raised in a world of distraction.
Hmm.
And they've had screens on them, they get beeps on their phone, they have games, they have this and that. There's 100 things that they do before doing anything because they're checking the social media, they're checking their BetMGM account, they're checking their fantasy football team. They might have 12 of them. There's so many things that they have that's distracting them from their success. What is their
Hmm.
success plan? And what is their plan for freedom? Like that's really, I think that's part of the discipline of being able to not engage. There's a million things you can do, and it's how do I reduce the things I focus on so I can focus on my freedom, I can focus on my success. And we were raised where we were kind of, you know, don't be heard, be seen and not heard, and so we're
Hmm.
kind of used to that
Yeah.
of being ignored. Whereas I think one of the challenges for the under 40s is that they're so used to being connected and engaged they need to kind of disengage from non-productive things so that they can focus on the things that are going to give them more freedom and give them more success.
You just helped me understand my son.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because he used to come in here and he's like, Dad, you got like 400 books. Literally, I got more than that. But in his mind, it's 400 books. And he's like, they're business or technology. And he's like, what are you doing? And all. And I was like, the same thing you do on the phone. This is my books are to me. I said, my books grow my mind, you know.
But
And
but think of this is that when he goes, he has his phone and he's just scrolling. So
yeah.
he's just getting like services of dopamine, but nothing lasting, nothing permanent, no frameworks for success. Whereas a
Huh.
book gives you that. And so I still give my sons a book every year.
I paid my kids to read books.
And remember, right, it's very hard for them to actually do that, but they will, they largely will commit to reading that book, or at least getting started on it. Like when we were growing up, we'd always have a book with us. If you were going to at a bus stop, you'd read a book. If you're waiting, you'd read a book. You'd have something to go. Whereas now they scroll, which gives them kind of that sugar dopamine rush, but nothing lasting, and certainly nothing helping them achieve freedom, nothing helping them achieve success.
Right.
Unless, of course, they're a million person influencer, then that's a different story.
I have no idea about that part, but okay. Yeah, whenever it comes to that part of technology, I'm not that smart in it, but you know, I will have to tell you that my kids hated dinner with me because that meant I was going to bring up the comments of, oh, what chapter are you on? Oh, I remember that. What part of that chapter did you like most? You know?
Well, I'm not trying to help you torture your children. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
they are coming from a different place. And, if you want to change where you're at, you got to change your habits.
Yeah.
And,
And
I've,
you taught me that. You
yeah,
taught me that.
and I've met, thousands of people and people, trying to help people achieve their dreams. And a lot of times people just liked that someone was there to listen, but then they weren't going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
it's easy to say, I want success, I want freedom, and it takes kind of a real character, and you have to start from the foundation and really build someone who's going to take those actions to achieve success and achieve freedom. And that's, you know, it's in our hands. We have we have the ability to do it, and most people choose not to. They choose to do something else. So one of the things for us, Tom, you'll get a laugh out of this. My sons weren't allowed to have a video game in the house until COVID. I let them buy one, and they were 20. One was 20, one was 18, one was 16. But it was COVID. They had to do that. But before that, what I would tell them is all your friends have this, so go to their house. But I knew they weren't going to do that. But also what I didn't want them to be good at video games because then they'd go to their friend's house and they'd get shot in the first 3 minutes, so it wasn't fun for them. So they had to focus on other things like becoming
Mm,
successful and learning how to embrace freedom. And that's where I the video games can be obsessive for people. Like one of our neighbor's sons would wake up at 5 in the morning to play video games when he was 6 years
oh,
old. Yeah, yeah. So it's just,
mm.
we're in a world of addictions, whether it's
World of constant
all
on
with
all
alcohol,
the time.
drugs, or attention. That's what we're surrounded by that, and it takes giving things up to be able to focus on what's important for us individually.
Yeah.
And it's, I certainly get distracted by this too, but
Yeah.
I try to reduce my distractions, and I don't have anything cool on my phone on purpose.
I have one. It's a little monitor. It goes on my arm and it constantly runs my phone down, so I don't get to play with my phone. But I I've really enjoyed our time here today, Chris. This has been so much fun to catch up with you. Glad to find out what's been going on in your life. And uh, I really wanted to kind of let everyone know that you have truly been a blessing in my life.
I appreciate it.
Most listeners don't know this, but I did not have a father. My father died whenever I was 4, died of cancer. And so uh, I always thought that God put certain people into my life that created that level of influence. You were the first person I ever met that talked about money and that it was okay to have some money
Wow.
and how to care and nurture and feed that money. So not for just for yourself, but for legacy.
Yeah,
So I personally want to thank you for what you've done for me and my family.
I really appreciate that. I didn't know that, so I appreciate it even more. I was so happy when you reached out for this, and that's what I've been doing this. So part of the online training academy was part of that. We had thousands of people come through there. But then I also, the last 20 years, up to last year, I was coaching youth sports, and it was showing people how to compete. And that's what we all need to remember is how do we compete in this world effectively?
Oh yeah.
Nothing's going to be given to us. So how do we compete and compete in a way we can be proud of? Compete in a way where we can be
Amen.
proud of the team we're part of the people that we surround ourselves with, and the impact we have on the world. And that's my next chapter. There we go, Tom. That's my
There you
next
go.
career.
Well, and I tell you what, that's so needed because we've got every other country influencing here, trying to get things from here over to there. And we will literally lose who we are if we forget what
We need
that's
to
like to
remember,
achieve.
yeah, we need to remember who we are. Life,
Yeah,
liberty, pursuit of happiness.
that's right.
Why we're here. That's what we were the beacon, and we have to continue to be that beacon for ourselves first, and then we
Mhm.
can worry about others. But we've got to kind of remember how important life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is, and that's what makes America special. So,
Well, you used to say in the class, put on your mask before you put on the mask for your child.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it, Chris. You've been so great. I'm gonna ask that we can get some links to put into the description for YouTube so that folks can find your books and all of that, and just maybe they want to get in contact with you and figure out stir up a conversation that's good for everyone.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. You have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Morning Joe with Tom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you next time for more real-life stories and inspiration on Morning Joe with Tom.